welcome to HealthLinks Aging Strong, which is Tufts Medical Center's injury prevention and outreach program that aims to share information and resources that empowers older adults. Today's guest is Ann Muskoff, and she was my guest a couple of weeks ago. Ann is the director of the Charlotte and Richard O'Connell Parkinson's Family Support Program at the Jewish Family and Children's Services. And last time she talked about Parkinson's, people living with Parkinson's. And this time she'll be talking about how people living with Parkinson's, as well as their care partners, can really help make the home environment be as safe and comfortable for everybody who lives there, especially the person living with Parkinson's. And I'm so excited to hear about this program, what you have to share with us, because last program, if anybody didn't see that, I encourage you to. I learned so much about Parkinson's and different ways, different resources available for them. So, Ann, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me again. It's my pleasure.
Thank you. All right. So, Ann, as you're preparing your slides, I know you have some slide presentations for us. Can you share with us maybe some ideas or some facts out there that that really supports the need for people living with Parkinson's? It supports the fact that it's really important for them to have home modification in many different ways.
Yes. Well, I don't have statistics on hand, but I can tell you just that Parkinson's, one of the symptoms is postural instability, which really makes people more prone to falling. And of course, falling makes people more prone to injury. So, as older adults, people who have, less bone mass and things like this is really critical to try to prevent falls for optimum, quality of life and mobility and functionality. So, Parkinson's is definitely part of that.
I wonder why that is, the change in the posture.
Well, I think it mostly just goes back to the loss of dopamine in the brain and how our muscles react and, the slowness and stiffness that comes with Parkinson's. I think we all take our trunk muscles for granted and how much they are key to our balance and our movement. They need to help us stabilize when we move our joints, especially out of away from our center of gravity, as we like to say. So those things put us off balance. And if we don't have that core strength to help keep us stable, we're more likely to fall.
Yeah. So, very fascinating.
Very
fascinating. All right. So
I'll go ahead and share.
Yeah. Yep.
So thank you again for having me. And today, I really just want to focus on adaptations, which is a key to living well with Parkinson's, but really life, for all of us. Even if you don't have Parkinson's, I hope there's something you can take away from this presentation. And I just like to start out with good old Dolly Parton. We cannot direct the wind, but we can adjust the sails. So again, I'm Ann Muskoff. I'm an occupational therapist and director of the Charlotte and Richard O'Connell Parkinson's Family Support Program. At Jewish Family and Children's Service, we have a Parkinson's dance program, a Tremble Clefs chorus, and support groups for our care partners and also the adult children of people with Parkinson's, as well as a quarterly education group. So just to review living well with Parkinson's, I want to talk a little bit about staying in the saddle. So, you have this diagnosis, and previously I shared sort of an image of how your care team is, and you as a person with Parkinson's being in the middle, and how do you stay in the focus? So first is setting goals, and we'll be talking a little bit more about that, but that's really key to driving your care. Building your team and learning to advocate for yourself. So again, living well with Parkinson's includes having a team of physicians, but also physical, occupational, and speech therapists, mental health counselors and therapists, all sorts of supports to help you live well. Of course, establishing and maintaining healthy habits is so key to living well, exercise and things like that. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Finding and utilizing supports is also key. None of us live alone. We all need support of others. And then it's also key to think about, establishing and reviewing your plans for the future. So if staying at home is really key to you, then, that's going to drive your care. So thinking about, finances as well as just living conditions is really important. And there are people to help you with that. And finally, embracing adaptations. And again, when I spoke with members of our groups, this is a key theme to how to live well with Parkinson's. So when we think about goals, really, this should be the motivation for adapting. And things to consider, questions to ask yourself are, what do you value? What brings you joy, and what does a good day look like to you? Or if you're writing a bio for your class reunion, what does it say? How are you spending your time? And most importantly, share these things. This is so that others can support you and help redirect you. We all get sidetracked with different problems or, challenges, but if you keep these goals in mind, they can really be helpful for driving your ability to adapt. I'd also just like to review, occupational therapy, since, occupational therapy, one of our key tools is adaptation, really. This is what we try to teach and help people with. So occupational therapy helps people with all health challenges to participate in daily life to the fullest. It's holistic. So we're going to look at your mind, body, and spirit. And we're also looking at the influence of the environment, the uniqueness of each individual, and how you accomplish occupational tasks. So we're not helping you find a job. We're helping you with your occupations, your daily things, activities. And I'll let you in on a secret, which is not a secret really, but how to think like an occupational therapist. So the things we think about are, the person, yourself, the task, what you're trying to do, and the environment. So what sort of stuff you're doing. When you see an occupational therapist, of course, they will evaluate your physical aspects. So they're going to look at strength and coordination, tremors, mobility, all those aspects of Parkinson's. So leave that to us. Of course, we want your input to hear what your challenges are. But there are also things to ask yourself, such as, what about this is important to me? How much time, energy, and money am I willing to put into this? What is the cost versus of safety versus independence? As I mentioned, injuries are costly, both time, healthcare, independence, those sorts of things. So, maybe it's time to make a change so that you can maintain your independence, even if you give up an activity that you enjoy. And then finally, do I need to accept a change? Unfortunately, Parkinson's is a progressive disease. It's not constantly downward, but sometimes there are moments when we might need to grieve losses and change expectations. But there's also opportunities then to celebrate adaptations and celebrate our ability to modify how we do things. So it doesn't have to be all framed in terms of a loss. Next, think about the task. So, really we're looking at what about this isn't working. If you're struggling or frustrated, we call this task analysis, and it's really breaking things down in its component parts and trying to figure out what isn't working. Then what variables influence someone's ability to do it? So again, this has a little bit to do with the person as well, but what time of day is best? How are medications? When is your energy high? When is it low? Things like that. Also, it's key to think about if there's a different way we could do this. We're so ingrained in our habits that often we forget to stop and think about, is there another way? And then finally, are there shortcuts I can take? The term we use often is called life hacks. That's sort of a lingo for ways to think about different things to live your life best. And to illustrate this, I like to tell a story about, there's more than one way to cut an apple. So growing up, of course, my mother used a paring knife and cut it in quarters and carved out the core. So most of my life, living on my own, I did the same. Well, one day I discovered one of these gadgets. It's beautiful. You just press down on it, it cores it and slices it automatically. What a great invention, right? But then you know what? I also found this little gadget. This one peels it and it cuts it thin. And, sometimes this is good for apple pie. It makes it quicker. So, I don't have to use a paring knife. I can use these gadgets. But then I don't even know how long I was well into adulthood when I saw someone else cut an apple this way. They just cut around the core. And I thought, oh my goodness, why haven't I not done this before? There's so many different ways to do things. And again, if we're not exposed to them, how will we know? And finally, there's always just biting into an apple. Maybe we don't need to cut it at all. So, just to get your mind thinking, something so simple as eating an apple can have so many different variations. And then we're just going to think about the environment. So, I like this cartoon about, thinking outside the box too far and not finding your way back. But really think outside the box when you're looking at an activity. I always think it's interesting to consider other professions or cultures or ages or diagnoses. There are similar problems throughout the world, but many different solutions. So ask other people and you might find something really interesting. It's also important to look at your physical space. So how are things set up? What's the flow or the organization? Especially I think about this in the kitchen, in the bedroom, how you're setting things up. And are you taking a lot of steps going back and forth when it could be more efficient? Even another style or brand, sometimes the slightest differences can make a huge difference. And then do you already have a tool that could help? Getting more tools isn't always better if they're cluttering up the home or if they only have one use. You may not have storage space for them. Now I just want to take a broader look at the environment in terms of home adaptations. So one thing I would recommend for everyone is a home safety evaluation. Don't be shy. People who do this, understand we all live with clutter and it can be really helpful. They're here to help you to be safe. Now, you can get these through a home healthcare, physical or occupational therapist. If you're using Medicare Part A in a lot of cases, but there's also private pay if you're not considered homebound. Or you can find certified aging in place specialists. There's lots of different ways. Always consider what their interest is and what their background and understanding is. Also, rethink how your things are organized. You'd like to use the example of spices. We all think about, organize our spices by category, put all our spices on, say, the bottom shelf of our cabinet. Well, that's high real estate. And maybe we only use 2 or 3 of them on a regular basis. So maybe we need to think about organizing things by frequency of use and not so much category. Declutter. We all could stand to do it, and we understand it's hard. And there are people that can help, professionals or even just a friend who can bounce off ideas and help you talk through whether you need something or not. And then smart home technology has come a long way in terms of being able to use your voice to activate light switches and listening to the weather and all these sorts of things. So that can be a real benefit. I'm sure, Debbie, you talk a lot about home adaptations on this program. And so I just want to review a few general things that might be a little bit more specific to Parkinson's. When it comes to furniture arrangement, for example, really avoiding these tight spaces and tricky maneuvers like having to take tight turns or backing into spaces, those sorts of things can be really challenging with Parkinson's and again, cause falls. It's actually difficult for people with Parkinson's to turn, 180, 360 degrees. So avoiding those sorts of tight turns can be really helpful. As well, surfaces to sit on. I like to talk about the Goldilocks height. You don't want anything too high. You could slip off the edge, and not too low that you get stuck. Certainly armrests are helpful. When it comes to floors, I know a lot of people look at rugs, and not all rugs are bad, but certainly thick rugs can be a trip hazard. Again, with Parkinson's, sometimes lifting the foot can be challenging. So, catching the foot on a thick rug can be a trip hazard. But thin rugs as well that wrinkle or slide can be hazardous. Also looking at wide open pathways and eliminating thresholds whenever possible. Again, they're a trip hazard. Stairs inside and outside of the home, we should look at railings on both sides, having good lighting, and even marking the edge of each step. Sometimes with the visual changes of Parkinson's, the depth perception and the contrast can be challenged. So putting a piece of tape or a contrasting color, similar to like you might see in, a hospital setting or something where there's a non-stick, grippy tape on the edge can be helpful. And then lighting, again, is so important. Next, I just want to take, sort of a sampling of those life hacks that I like to say when it comes to activities of daily living, or ADLs. So when you think about getting up in the morning, for example, again, that core strength and mobility can make this a challenge for Parkinson's, but so many people have benefited from something called the bed rail. There's a few different types out there. You can get them at a medical goods store or Amazon, and they usually just slip between the mattress and box spring. But as well, just working on your technique with a therapist, how to bend your knees and get momentum and use your arms can be helpful. I also like to just point out, in terms of safety, having a touch lamp next to your bed, so you don't have to fiddle for a switch. Having water and medications next to the bed if you need that first dose of Sinemet or carbidopa levodopa to get going. Make sure, of course, you're swallowing safely, not trying to take this when you're lying in bed, but, having that nearby. And also slow transitions. Again, the change in blood pressure may not be kind of as quick with Parkinson's when you change positions. So, taking your time and not rushing to the bathroom and those sorts of things. I've also heard from, members that sometimes even changing bedding or pajamas can be helpful. Something that's a little bit silkier, like flannel is great. It keeps you warm, but it's almost like Velcro. So sometimes having something a little slippery, not too slippery, can be helpful. When you when you think about getting ready in the morning, another way to think about things is organizing your clothes by outfits. So you don't have to make so many decisions. You don't have to go to so many places. You just take it off the rack, or you take it out of your drawer and it's all there. Again, with Parkinson's, some people may have a stronger side or a weaker side or a stiffer side. And usually the weaker or stiffer one, it's easier to address that first. There are different types of closures. So for fine motor coordination challenges, there's Velcro or magnetic. And I have the asterisk there because if it is magnetic and you have a pacemaker or deep brain stimulator, just check with your doctor. OTs love to, talk about adaptive equipment such as a button hook, a reacher or grabber, as some people know them, to pick something up off the floor, and a shoehorn to get shoes on. As well, of course, there's elastic shoelaces and Velcro closures and all sorts of adaptations. As well, here's an example of something called a pocket dresser. It, can be slipped in your pocket if zippers are hard, buttons, things like that, and you're going out in public and you just need a little extra help. You can put one of those in your pockets. I like to share a story of when I asked some of our members about like adaptations they've made. One of them said she was getting ready for, a concert or something, had a button-up blouse, and it was a time-sensitive issue. She had to get out the door. So she was struggling with it and got a few buttons, but wasn't able to get, maybe the top 3 or something. So she grabbed a scarf and she put the scarf around and it was all well. And I just thought that was a great example of, how to adapt. And just to make you aware, there's a lot of different adaptive clothing brands out there: Buck & Buck, Silverts, Magna Ready, Tommy Hilfiger, and Kizik shoes. These are all, made to look like normal clothes, but behind the surface, they're Velcro and magnets and things like that. So those are some things you might want to look into. When it comes to the bathroom, I know that raised toilet seats and shower chairs and railings and grab bars, kind of can be a challenge for people. They associate them with being sick or being elderly, and in a way that's not positive. But I'd really challenge people to think about their attitudes around these things. There are many inventions these days that are just commonplace that we all use. And I think these are heading in that direction too. If you've ever tried to shave your legs standing up in the shower, you might actually appreciate a shower chair. As well, for fine motor coordination challenges, there's electric toothbrushes and razors, and flossers and water picks and these sorts of things. If, dropping soap is a challenge, there's bath mitts with, liquid soap you can use, or soap on a rope. And even motion sensor soap pumps and touch faucets, things like this. Here's an example of a nail clipper that doesn't take as much fine motor coordination. And this is a picture of a bath mitt, for example. So there's lots of tricks out there. Also in the bathroom, constipation can be an issue with Parkinson's. So you may have heard of something called the squatty potty. It's something that just helps anatomically to move someone's bowels. And so that may be helpful. As well, if you've survived the great toilet paper shortage of 2020, you've probably heard of bidets, and this can help with hygiene. They can attach to an existing toilet. There's also something called a toilet aid. So if shoulder problems and stiffness are a challenge, you can use one of these to help with hygiene. I shared this before, but it's just important because medications are such a big part of Parkinson's, that people keep to a schedule, that they take them with a full glass of water for maximum absorption and staying hydrated, and also best on a empty stomach. So planning them around meals. As well, phone alarms. I always feel like I'm in good company when I'm at a talk about Parkinson's, and it might be noon or something, and I start hearing all sorts of phone alarms. It's a great tool that we can all use. And then just again, here's an example of a pill pouch that you can take on the go. There's a myriad of pill organizers out there, so I'm certainly not endorsing these necessarily, but there's one called an e-pill, for example, that you can set different alarms. It will tell you if you missed a pill. And if you have, rare med changes, pretty stable medication regimen, there's all sorts of things like a pill pack or pre-sorted medications where you can just take them all at once and you don't have to worry about sorting them yourself. So lots of things around pills out there. When it comes to the kitchen, certainly there's many adaptations that people can do here. One, for example, is to prep food, just sitting, taking out the balance out of the equation or the endurance and just sitting to chop vegetables or, peel potatoes, whatever it may be. If tremor is challenging and scooping up food, some people find that using a pasta bowl or pie plate for a dish, or there's something called a plate guard, which clips onto a regular plate just to scoop food up to. If, salad is really something you enjoy, but it's hard to stab all the pieces of lettuce, putting it in a wrap and being able to hold it and eat the salad that way is another idea. One of our participants said that she usually eats soup with a slotted spoon, a brothy sort of minestrone type soup. She'll eat it with a slotted spoon so she can have all the vegetables and beans and then drink the broth later. So I think that's another great idea. All the good ideas come from these people. Good Grips utensils, that's just another brand that helps with grip. So it's a little bit easier to hold, and those are pretty common as well. Again, with tremors, sometimes people are concerned about spilling. There's a lot of specialized cups. This one's called the Jamber mug. There's lots of different types out there. Kangaroo cup, no spill cups, things like that. But again, sometimes the commonplace, just finding a water bottle that you like. There's a zillion different water bottles out there, and one that has a straw and a cap may be your best bet. There's something called Go Silly, which is just putting silicone lids on any sort of drink. You might need to check with your speech therapist. Straws aren't for everyone. If you're having swallowing difficulties, they could be a little bit of a risk. So make sure you check with them. But I also just learned about this from another participant called the Spill Knot. So, if your goal is to keep drinking out of your favorite mug because it's been your favorite mug for decades, well, this can help you. You just put it on this little device and you can carry it around the house and it doesn't spill. It uses physics. So it's a neat little invention. I think all of us have challenges around opening containers. So I'm just going to show a few examples of things that are available out there. A Robo Twist is something that can help open jars. Electric can openers, certainly there's larger ones that are mounted, but this is just a single one-touch, place it on the can. These clamshells are my nemesis, trying to open these, but there's actually a tool called the Zip It that helps open them a little bit more easily. There's a can opener with pull rings. There's something that I refer to as a church key. This might be a regional thing, but for opening some of these takeout containers and getting that lid started, I've found that I can use this church key to get it started. As well as plastic bottle openers. This can be challenging. There's several different gadgets out there. But one of my favorite, honestly, for containers is just a simple needle nose pliers. It's something, that you may already have at home, and they can help you grip something a little bit easier. Again, with regards to meal prep, there's all sorts of tools out there for chopping. There's this adaptive cutting board that can help hold your fruits and vegetables. There's a chopper thing that you just press down. But there's also a food processor, and there's also scissors, like kitchen shears, that can help cut things. Or if you prefer to use a knife, there's cut gloves to help you stay, safe and not cut yourself. But you know what? You don't have to cook. You can use pre-cut vegetables. You can use frozen meals. You can use Uber Eats or Meals on Wheels, all these things. Again, what is your priority? Do you enjoy cooking? Do you want to continue to do this? Or do you really prefer just to take the shortcut and take that equation, take that energy and spend it elsewhere? When it comes to mobility, there's a few things that can be helpful for Parkinson's especially. There's something called a U-Step walker. I'm not going to talk about all these features, but this is a walker that, it has some specialization for Parkinson's symptoms, things that can help cue someone when they're having difficulty with getting started with where they're walking, that freezing of gait. It can have, brakes to help them to pace themselves. And it's also very heavy so that it helps, with walking and stability. Of course, that's a disadvantage. It's not so easy to transport, but it can be really great for some people. There's also a cane that shoots a laser with the press of a button if that freezing is challenging. But some people like something called Nordic walking poles. For Parkinson's, it helps with reciprocal gait. It helps with posture, and training with these with a physical therapist can be really beneficial. For getting up from maybe a favorite chair or something, there's certainly raised seats or cushions. There's things you can put under a chair, to raise it up or to make it more firm. There's lift seats, all sorts of things around sitting down. As well, therapists, we like this phrase called nose over toes. It's, again, just practicing and learning how shifting your weight forward can help you stand up more easily. But I always like to mention a good old song and dance. Again, the power of music that I talked about last time can really help your muscles get going and help you get moving. Car transfers can be challenging. So there's something called a handy bar that fits in the door latch that can help you maneuver in and out and also stand up. There's also this thing called a car caddy, which attaches to the door frame and helps pull up. And if pivoting into the car is challenging, you can use this swivel seat cushion, or sometimes even just a plastic trash bag actually can be helpful. So it doesn't necessarily have to be something you need to spend money on. And I mentioned, the importance of lighting in the home. So again, there's a lot of innovations over the years, motion sensor lights, touch lights. There's push button lights. So if you have a space that's just hard to light, you don't need to get an electrician out there. You can just stick these to whatever space it is, and you just literally push it. It's, battery operated. Remote controlled outlets. So if you don't have Alexa or something like that, you can again have these outlets with something plugged in and just press a button. If changing light bulbs is a challenge for you, there's certainly LED bulbs, which may never need changing in your lifetime. And these could be free with an energy assessment. So there's lots of different things out there. And finally, just a few miscellaneous things, but, Alexa, the Amazon feature, Siri, which is from Apple, and Dragon, these are all voice activated. So Dragon Dictate is for, word processing, emails and that sort of thing. These are all technologies that can help these days. And they've gotten a lot better over the years. So again, if, voice is a challenge with Parkinson's, it can learn your voice a little bit better. Of course, I would still recommend speech therapy, but, they can be great. Smartwatches, of course, many people are familiar now that an Apple Watch has a fall detection system built in. So it will help, allow you to call someone from your watch, sort of like Dick Tracy. And if it doesn't get a response, it will automatically call 911. For those who have a decreased sense of smell, there are natural gas alarms. If you can't smell that natural gas, there's also an alarm for that, as well as the carbon monoxide. And then even, I got this also from a participant with regards to credit cards, trying to get them out of a wallet can be really challenging. But if you just put it in a zipper pouch, they're a little bit easier to file through and get out. So where to get these? Certainly, I will say that insurance pays for a limited number of them. Toilet seats, sometimes a shower chair, sometimes. Medicare, unfortunately, doesn't pay for a lot. They pay for a commode, for example, and a walker, sometimes a wheelchair, things like that. But, these more nuanced technologies, there's some great resources out there with Easter Seals. They have these assistive regional technology regional centers. And there's a phone number you can call. You can meet with them and see what they have to offer. They have loan programs as well. Many senior centers or councils on aging have equipment closets to try. The Masons in Woburn also has a program where people can donate and borrow equipment. And there's a couple of websites. So DME stands for Durable Medical Equipment. So dmereuse.org and massmatch.org are another great resource for some of these technologies. And then in closing, I just sort of want to bring it back to these healthy habits. So the I's habits, so exercise. Again, it's just so important. These community wellness programs for Parkinson's, they have a lot of different options. And because they are Parkinson's specific, they also, people who run them know how to adapt them for different levels. So, it's inherently adaptable, and that's really important. Socialize. Again, it's so important to stay socially connected. Social isolation can be so challenging. So, finding a group, it could be an exercise or support group, but it could be a book club or a faith-based group. Even just planning a regular meetup with a friend, the regularity and the predictability is really beneficial for us. And then ritualize. So, finding habits to support sleep, cognitive health, emotional and spiritual well-being. It could be meditation, could be some sort of faith-based gathering, puzzles, all these sorts of things that we do on a regular basis can really benefit us. And then just from my groups, I hear a lot about the challenges around socialization. People often have good intentions, but, feel awkward and don't know how to help someone. So if you're someone living with Parkinson's, just a few things to think about. One is maybe just trying to be specific about your ideas and requests. Again, someone may be well-intentioned, they just don't know how to help. And so they may withdraw. But really, if you say, I really could use a ride to the grocery store or something, people are generally really willing to help. Keep it simple. Someone said the other day that, they don't have dinner parties anymore. They just have cheese and crackers. And that's great. You don't have to have an elaborate 5-course meal. Just keep it simple. Think about comfortable locations. Are they accessible? Are they uncrowded? What time of day are you going? And all those sorts of things. How are you is a loaded question. And so sometimes it helps to come up with a stock answer and to use humor. Because it's not always great, and people don't always want to be a downer, so maybe you can come up with a good answer. And it's a great question. What are your stock answers to how are you? Some people just like to say I'm managing, or different things like that. And then be flexible and adapt. One of our members said it is really helpful to be open about Parkinson's and what people are experiencing to help other people understand and empathize. If you're a friend, again, think of alternate questions to how are you? What's something that made you smile today, or what's new? If someone, if your friend with Parkinson's is maybe having some more cognitive challenges, think about conversation topics, even ones that you could propose ahead that they can think about. Something that's easy to follow and engage. So, storytelling is a wonderful example. Thinking of stories from the past may be really fun and good way to get to know them and in a way to interact with each other. And then, of course, be patient and be flexible. I just want to end with this quote. In our personal and professional lives, we're constantly hit with one adversity after the other, most of which we have no control over. But the 4 things we have total control over is how we react, how we adapt, how we breathe, and how we take action. So I think those are really key things to remember, Parkinson's or not. So again, here's my contact information if I can be helpful for anyone. AMUSKOPF as in Frank at jfcsboston.org. So thank you so much.
Wow. And I kept writing notes and different things I need to get.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's actually a great point. I think that's one of the reasons why having an occupational therapist to help you, figure out what tools will work for you in your environment and with your things. I know, a lot of times people get ads and whatnot and may be tempted to spend money, but I always say if there's any way to try before you buy, I encourage that. So, ask around, that sort of thing, borrow, whatever you can do.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of questions have popped into my head.
Mm-hmm.
So I have aging parents, and my sisters and I and our spouses have been helping them be able to live comfortably in their home because they've decided to age in place.
Mm-hmm.
They're immigrants, and so they're very proud of their home, and that's where they want to stay.
Mm-hmm.
And so trying to do home modifications for my parents who don't have Parkinson's disease, but they have starting to have that limitations of just getting older. What is the difference between a home modification for people who want to age in place who don't have the diagnosis of Parkinson's, and also, what's the difference between the two?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the few things that I talked about that maybe especially specific to Parkinson's in terms of, spaces to turn around in and back up and things, maybe just need special importance. But honestly, so many of the modifications are universal. I love this concept of universal design where it's good for everyone, whether you're someone with a stroller and you need a ramp, or you're someone with a wheelchair and need a ramp. Grab bars, they help us all feel more stable in the shower and things like that. So, certainly wide open areas with, accessible, not having thresholds if possible in the shower. That's ideal, sort of this roll-in shower or walk-in shower. Certainly aging in place needs to consider the possibility of having a wheelchair for mobility at some point. And that amount of space required is really key. Stairs is another thing that can be tricky. I know a lot of people will tell me that, they have Parkinson's and stairs are actually no problem, and they're really much easier. And that can be the case because the stairs, have a built-in cue for to keep going, whereas a flat surface may be more challenging with that freezing of gait. But again, with anyone, stairs, a misstep on stairs can be really devastating. So I would still recommend trying to be on one level as much as is possible. But some people do invest in, a stair lift, for example, if they feel they need to go upstairs and things like that. Again, the railings and making sure the steps are clearly demarcated and things like that. Yeah.
Very good points. Now, we at Tufts Medical Center, we get a lot of admissions with the diagnosis of falling. And, sometimes falling from standing positions, sometimes, just falling out of bed, falling out of the chair, or just tripping and falling. Now, if we think about home modification, how we can decrease the falls, one of the rooms that tends to get a lot of falls is the bathroom. And you mentioned, making sure if you have a shower, getting rid of that barrier so that won't be a tripping hazard. But if somebody was taking a shower and they did have the disability type shower that doesn't have the raised, oh my gosh, that little barrier.
Sure.
How can you keep the water from spattering so that when the person leaves the shower, they don't slip?
That's great. Great point.
There's a special rug that can absorb extra water for those type of showers.
Absolutely. There's all sorts of bath mats, but the key to a good bath mat is having like a rubber bottom or something that it doesn't slide around, so it still absorbs water. A good shower curtain, of course, can help keep that. And even a handheld shower, to direct the water spray in the right direction can be helpful. But the floor surface, that it's in good condition, that the tile isn't slippery. There are some large, they're beautiful tiles, but when they're big and glossy, they're a lot more prone to be slippery. And of course, some kind of shower shoe. Even I've had people wear like Crocs or something like that in the shower, something that's rubbery, and have a shower shoe that can be more sturdy.
That's a very good point. Very good point. Now, how about, okay, so you mentioned a lot of these home safety modifications, but let's just back up. Mm-hmm. How does somebody know that they need help? And how can they get in touch with somebody like yourself, an occupational therapist? What is the process for that? When they start thinking, okay, this is beyond me, I've been falling, or my loved one has been falling, I need professional help.
Yeah. I mean, I would say starting with a conversation with the primary care physician is always a good place. Of course, they want to rule out, other causes of falls related to medication and blood pressure and, all sorts of things like that. But in terms of getting someone with eyes on the home, I'd recommend, having a referral for occupational therapy. Under Medicare, there are certain guidelines to having home health for Medicare Part A. Someone needs to be homebound and they need, sort of medical certification. So unfortunately, it's not for everyone, especially those who are trying to be proactive. There are some organizations that use Medicare Part B, which is sort of like, outpatient therapy, but in your home. They're a little bit harder to come by, but for occupational therapists, but there are certainly physical therapists who do that, who can do home safety evaluations. As I mentioned, there's private pay options that, we do at JFNCS, for example, others out there. And there are some companies that do it as well. I think, it's good to have maybe someone with you when they are evaluating to make sure that, you're asking the right questions and finding out, what their motivation is for recommending some changes. Some people, maybe looking to make a major modification that's not necessary or vice versa. You never know. But having that second opinion, I think, is always a good idea. So, and then, if someone's an inpatient, for example, even just taking a picture and showing it to an occupational therapist can at least get some ideas and some questions going. I've certainly done that in inpatient rehab, asking a family member to go to the home and measure a space and be able to recommend some equipment for that is better than nothing. So.
Yeah. Wow. Can you just define, you said homebound.
Mm-hmm.
That might be, maybe people might have different ideas of what homebound is. Can you just define what homebound is so that way they'll know, individuals who could be watching this might be able to say, oh, I know somebody then who it classifies as being homebound, and maybe they can qualify for, all these different resources. So what is homebound?
Yeah, homebound is really just about the difficulty and energy and safety it takes to leave the house. So under Medicare, you can certainly leave the house for appointments and certain, like going to church or synagogue, in an occasional appointment. But if you're able to get out to go to outpatient therapy, to go grocery shopping, to do things on a regular basis that most people normally would, they don't consider that homebound. They would consider that you could go to outpatient. So it's often about someone's personal mobility, how far they can walk safely and without pain and things like that. And, how they're able to get out of their house. So it's a bit of a fuzzy line. I don't remember, to be honest, the exact wording in Medicare, but there are certainly, it has to be basically hard to get out of the house. It doesn't mean you're strictly homebound, that you can never leave, but that it takes significant amount of energy to leave and help.
And so significant amount of help, assistance to leave the house by yourself. So if somebody was living, if they had a care partner and they lived with somebody who was homebound, it would mean that that person who is homebound would require the assistance of another person to
Yep.
see.
To get ready, to get dressed, to get downstairs, all those sorts of things, handheld assist or, assistive devices and things like that. So, yeah.
Okay. So thank you for clarifying that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so let's say a person did get a home safety eval and it's been deemed that this person does require home modification. But in the process of home modifying for safety,
Mm-hmm.
There needs to be a lot of decluttering or letting go. How does somebody get to a point where they feel like they're psychologically ready to release or let go of something that they've had for a long time?
Yeah, that's a real challenge for so many people, and it's not unique to Parkinson's, but there's a lot of ways to think about this. Again, the goals, I think everything has to come back to your goals. That's your inspiration, that if you can stay safe in your own home and spend more time with your grandkids that way, then, maybe it doesn't matter to have, some books or something like that may be taking up space. But I also think it helps to have like an accountability partner or someone that you can talk to about these goals and you can talk through these things, about maybe what's something that's important to you about it. And they can help evaluate, well, that may be true, but did you know you can also find this, you can access this resource or this book, you can get out of the library actually. So, maybe you could just know that it's out there and access it when you need it. But certainly, therapists, wellness coaches, professional organizers, all of these people are there to help with your mindset and changing and, really helping you come around to thinking about how you can live better and get rid of these things. I think Marie Kondo was fashionable at least a few years ago. And, some people may not agree, but I think one thing that I found helpful about her was that she recognized that, things have a purpose and a place and time. And there are times when we have to just thank it for its service, say, this was meaningful to me when I was in college and it helped me in college, but I'm past college. And so thank you. And let it go. So it's but it's not easy. Yeah, that's why there are a lot of people out there to help for that very reason.
Yeah, it's not easy. That's right. It's definitely not easy. But I love how you said earlier though, it's important for people living with Parkinson's to not have tight spaces.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, perhaps learning that, some of the extra furnitures or extra this and that may actually be are going to get in their way. When it comes to maybe keeping something versus safety, perhaps that might be a good way for them to kind of determine what can stay and what can go.
Yeah. I mean, there's a real, hazard to clutter having fallen or, being on a place that you need to set something and even just like a kitchen island, for example, it can be a great tool for getting a plate from, or, the microwave to the table. You can sort of set it there in between. But if the kitchen island is full of stuff and you have to carry the plate, that could be hot and full of food, then, just even that is, a challenge. So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So can you share with us any type of like good stories or any other lessons that you might have learned, life hacks from people in your groups?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I just got an email from someone the other day that I had worked with. She was living alone with Parkinson's. And I mentioned that, I think I talked to her about some strategies around carrying her breakfast. She'd like to eat in a sunroom, and wake up that way. And again, this is her goal. This is what brings her joy. And so we talked about some ways to be able to carry her food safely. And she wrote me back and she said, I found that a basket like Little Red Riding Hood was really a good way to get all my things there. So, baskets like that or some sort of bag and containers with lids, to be able to carry things, not worry about them spilling, and then sort of unpack like a little picnic in your own home can be a good one. I've tried to share some other ones, but, I think this is the benefit of talking to other people, and having support groups is, I'm sure your problem is not unique in terms of something you may be challenging, and someone else in the group, there's a good chance that they've thought about it too. And even if they don't have a solution, thinking about it together, having those different backgrounds and different experiences of life can really help come up with a solution and things to try. And not every solution works the first time. You may have to go through a few to find the right one, but yeah, I think it's really beneficial to talk to other people.
I love that. Using a basket just to kind of be able to carry everything, right? Yeah. And really making it fun for yourself as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really.
So great. You mentioned something about how important it is to think about when you're modifying your home, the flow.
Mm-hmm.
How even from the way, putting the clothes away and making sure that you have the outfit there. So that way it lessens you having to go from one space to the other. Mm-hmm. Any other tips as far as flow goes to help people out there who are maybe struggling with trying to organize themselves? This could be people living with Parkinson's or not, because sometimes it's hard for people to understand, okay, I have my knives over here, mm-hmm. but I have my cutting board over there across the kitchen. What are some ways to help people be able to kind of think about a better flow for creating a nice system that's going to help reduce any type of injuries or waste?
Yeah, I think it goes back to habits. I think, there's probably a reason why the knives and the cutting board are in different parts of the kitchen. And so trying to take a step back and really think about why we're doing things. I mean, I still will sometimes be in my kitchen and think, why have I been storing this here for so long when it just fits perfectly over here? It makes so much more sense. And so sometimes, when people have been in the hospital or in rehab, I tell them to go to your house like you've just been there the first time, like you're a guest in your own home, and try to look at things with fresh eyes in terms of where things are. And, for example, like even if you live just, with you and a care partner and it's just two people most of the time, do you really need the bottom shelf to take up, 10, 12 dinner plates and the top shelves to have all the bowls where you have to reach, or could you just have a couple settings of each on the bottom shelf where they're easy to reach and put the extras up top for when the guests come? And little things like that. So trying to look with fresh eyes, I think, is important. And even just try to, even count your steps. How many steps are you taking? It's great to stay active. Don't get me wrong. And, maybe for some people, having the steps are important, but I'd encourage you to take steps in nature and not having to go back and forth in your bedroom. Save your steps for the things that's really enjoyable and important to you. But how many steps does it take you to get dressed in the morning? Are you taking 200 steps just to gather all your things, or are they all right there where you need them? So I think that can be really helpful too.
I love it.
Yeah.
Looking at my notes here, making sure I got all my questions asked. You mentioned a word in your presentation, holistic. I love that word. And, when I first heard that word, when I was in nursing school, and how as nurses, we have to think of what we do for the patient in a holistic way. We're not just looking at the wound. We're looking at how, that person is dealing with the wound, who could be taking care of that person when they're home with the wound, the medications for so like all these different angles, holistic approach. Can you speak a little bit more about occupational therapy and how they apply a holistic lens when they're when they're consulting for a patient or a client.
Yeah, I think similar to what you're saying, we might get a referral for a specific diagnosis or a specific problem, but really it's always so much more than that. It's a person first and foremost, who has values and beliefs and habits and, quirks and everything, and looking at who they are and why they do things, I think is so important. We could be, if we set all the goals and say you must be independent in tying your shoes, but someone could care less about tying their shoes, it's just a lot of waste. And so really thinking holistically in terms of, what's important to a person, what do they value, how do they want to spend their energy, how do they want to spend their day, and let that guide the treatment, I think is just so important. And yes, sometimes that includes engaging more help so that they can do what's important to them, not spending energy or wasting energy or time on something that takes significantly longer with Parkinson's. But, having the help, that may be the solution. It may not be more independence. Certainly if independence is the goal, then we want to help you be independent. But if independence is not the goal in some cases, just getting more help, that's looking at things holistically.
Mm. Yeah, so it's going back to the goals. What's the person's goals?
Absolutely.
And what brings them joy, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And having the support system to help them.
Yes. Yeah. That's key. The support systems and
definitely. So we're almost at the top of the hour. Can you share with us what do you want us to take away from this program today? What do you want us to kind of really sit with and be able to kind of research maybe and be able to, share with other people who in our lives who might have a diagnosis of Parkinson's disease?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think the thing to remember is that we're human and we adapt more than we even realize to everyday situations. And so we do have the capability to adapt, and we do have the ability to change, but it's tapping into those resources that we have, whether they're internal or external. Having those supports can be really important. So taking the time to evaluate these things is time well invested, in my opinion. Learning to adapt, learning to change and accept change is really so important to living well. And, really, this is what I hear from our participants who live with it, being able to have that sense of humor and to accept change and to continue to live the life that they hope to live is where it's at.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure adaptation is a constant thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You can't just adapt once, because as we get older, a new form or a new way of adapting to our limitation is indicated.
Yeah. And that's really resilience. Resilience isn't necessarily bouncing back to a level that you were at before. It's about learning to adapt. And we are resilient as human beings. Yeah. So find that resilience.
Oh, I love it. That's a great way to end the program for today. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you.
So much. I really learned so much from today's different life hacks and, what occupational therapists do and the importance of home modification for people who live with Parkinson's disease. So I really want to thank you.
Thank you.
I want to thank the Quincy Health Department for sponsoring the Aging Strong program. We've been a partner in Aging Strong for almost a year now. I really appreciate all the help in helping me promote my injury prevention and outreach work for Tufts Medical Center's trauma department. I want to thank you all for continuing to support this program. And until next time, I wish you a healthy and happy and safe day.